Hey everybody, welcome back to Silver and Black Today, Odyssey Sports original podcast. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get your audio. We certainly appreciate that. Don't forget to rate and review. Also, this is the BetUS post-game show, and the video always brought to you by our good buddies over at BetUS, where, again, I want to tell you, we still got the playoffs coming up. Raider season might be over, but you can get a 150% sign-up bonus using the promo code YouTube150. That's YouTube150. Go check it out. Make sure you do that. It's up to $2,000 at BetUS. All right, we're back. Scott Gulbransen with my good buddy Murf from Raiders Fan Radio. We'll get to the voice of the fan here in a second. But just to recap, the Raiders, their final game of the 2024 season, 34-20. They drop one at home to the Los Angeles Chargers, who secured the number 5 seed in the AFC side of the playoffs. And the Denver Broncos won against the Chiefs' backups earlier in the day as well, and that means that the entire AFC West, except for the Raiders, sorry guys, made the playoffs. So that's where we're at with that, but we're going to get into the game here. The Raiders finished the season at 4-13. The game pretty much, Murph, to me, went as the season has gone. There were moments where the Raiders, you thought, boy, they can stay in this game against the Chargers. Of course, the last time these two teams played at Allegiant Stadium, the Raiders put up 63 points. Not so today. It took them until the end of the game and sort of junk time to get to that 20-point mark. But we had some great performances. Of course, you saw Jacoby Myers come out and have another big day. Brock Bowers had a couple plays, including that late touchdown, which I loved his reaction to it, and I'll get to that in a second. But the Raiders continued to struggle on offense, got into the red zone for the first time in the fourth quarter, and just could not get anything moving on offense. Charger defense is good. I know that's painful to hear for Raider Nation out there, but one of the best in the NFL, if not the best, and they really gave the Raiders fits throughout that time and throughout the game in this one, and a tough way for Raider Nation to go out losing at home. But hey, now you can start to look towards the future. But before we do that, we want to talk about this game. And Murph, I want to get your reaction because you shared some comments with me and some thoughts with me before we went on the air. But it sort of went the way the rest of 2024 has gone. There were moments on defense, there were moments on offense where this team looked good. Team always plays hard. You can't take that away from them, no doubt about it. But it sort of was a microcosm, I think, of the entire season. That was just not enough on offense, not enough on defense to contain a starting quarterback. This time, of course, the Raiders won 2 in a row before this, playing some of the lesser teams in the NFL. Then they faced a team that's going to the playoffs, and what you saw in this game as the Raiders season comes to an end, a season of disappointment, but certainly there's a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see if there's a lot to look forward to, frankly, Scott. I mean, this was such a struggle throughout the course of this season, and to get to this last game, if you as a Raider fan are okay with the entire division making the playoffs, including sweeping us and for us going over in the division, if you think that there's anything redeemable when it comes to this coaching staff, I challenge that. There's nothing. What aside from individual performances, shout out Jacoby Myers today, as you mentioned, of course, the young man Brock Bowers, who has been not only the most dominant rookie tight end in history, but one of the more dominant pass catchers in the league this year. Aside from individual performances, what is it that you've seen from this Raider team that would encourage you for what's going to happen should we decide to, quote, run this thing back, as the kids say? Like this idea and I love the Raiders. It's like third on my list. It's like faith, family, and the freaking Raiders are right there, man. I love them more than anything, not more than anything, more than just most things. And also I'll root for them going into next year. Should they retain this, whatever this thing is that we've got going on right now. But that said, like, how can you endorse what you just saw? Like, and it was covered up by 2 wins against 2 bum-ass football teams. And then now look what happens when you return to start playing competent football teams. We got our ass kicked at home when there's no one there to even see it. God bless Eric Allen for lighting the torch today. Would have been cool if there would have been someone there to see it. You see the pictures coming from the tailgate. Either the tailgates or the parking lot is either empty or it's loaded with powder blue and freaking Charger bolts, man. Like, it's we're down bad. We're just down bad. And I think that it is incumbent upon Mark Davis as the leader of this organization to make a change, a significant change, a drastic change. And while I don't know if turning over football operations is in the cards or not, we don't know that. And there's been some other questions that have come up today that kind of have moved the meter on what's going to go on with Tom Brady's involvement, as you mentioned, or whatever, or if he'll be involved even at all. And so all that said, there's no way that this can stand. I mean, as the great, Jeff Lebowski said, these atrocities will not stand, man. Like, we can't do this. And the last time we saw us get embarrassed by the Chargers, it was in a soccer stadium in LA, and freaking Jack Del Rio announced his own firing at the podium. Well, you know what? Antonio Pierce needs to follow suit. He needs to announce his firing. He needs to go the way of Gerard Mayo and not even make it to tomorrow to announce his firing. We need a clean damn house, Scott. This was embarrassing to be a Raider fan. I'm trying to remain positive, man. I'm trying to stay to have something to lean into, man. But I don't see it, man. And I feel like, and I'll say this, Raider Nation, then I'll shut up. I feel like I've just been mad all day long. And I'm not a mad guy. Like, I don't have negative energy about me. That's not like the way that I go about life. But I felt ill from freaking the second game started today because I knew that this shit was coming. And it never got any better. For a second, it looked good, and then all of a sudden, it just went. It took a half, but a Raider game eventually broke out.
That's the thing I look at too, because I know some people were getting either excited or upset, depending on what side of the fence you're on when it comes to the Antonio Pierce conversation. But Adam Schefter had done his little segment where he said, "Oh, is he going to stay or go with coaches?" Of course, we already saw Gerard Mayo within an hour after the game. The Patriots won today, taking out of the first slot in the draft, by the way, get fired. And he said, well, it could go either way with Antonio Pierce. And he was leaning towards he's safe. And a lot of people, I think, took that to the bank. In listening to the clip, he didn't say that. He said, look, it could go either way. I'm shocked that it could go either way, because that's the way I look at this game. And you mentioned it with what you said, Murph, during your statements there, which was the idea that, how can you accept this and say, well, yes, did he have everything he needed? No team is perfect. The team that is coming off what they came off of last year, looking for young talent, still looking for a quarterback. Yeah, again, the hill for Antonio Pierce to climb was very big. Doesn't mean he couldn't have done it, but to me, again, he showed me nothing, even in the past 3 weeks, that would make you think that this is the person that you want to turn the keys over to long term, right? And to me, that's the issue here, is that this team barely throughout the season, literally 1 or 2 games, played 4 quarters of football. We didn't see it. Yes, the bad OC hire. Yes, it got better under Scott Turner, but not good enough. Better does not mean good enough. And to your point, what are you going to accept? You look at the division. Yes, Bo Nix played the backup Chiefs today, but if you saw it was like 24 of 26 or 26, 28, something like that, for 300 plus yards and 4 touchdowns. Yeah, he's playing backups, but they're NFL players nonetheless, even if they're backups. So you start to look at where the Raiders are in this division. And to me, you don't need a guy who's learning on the job. You don't need a guy who you want to, hey, we'll give him another chance, and then next year have to fire him after 5 games, right? And by the way, everybody says, the people who want Antonio Pierce to come back, Murph, they say, well, I'll just hire a better offensive coordinator. What offensive coordinator is going to come to a job?
Nobody.
And say, oh yeah, I'll go work for Antonio Pierce. He might get fired pretty soon. Nobody's going to do it. So to me, you have to start from scratch. You have to start over. In the quarterback situation, we talked about ad nauseum here, you and I, and me and Mo on the show. It's probably not going to get solved next year completely. Maybe I'm wrong, but they're going to have to probably get a quarterback in the 2nd or 3rd round and hope that quarterback turns into a developmental project that's good enough to eventually become a franchise quarterback. Aiden O'Connell, again, good quarterback, showed today. He had moments that were great, but he's not the guy who elevates your team. Even on bad teams, you can see good quarterbacks elevate their team to a level where they win games or they stay closer in games that they shouldn't. You didn't see that today either, and you haven't seen that from Aiden O'Connell either, with respect to him. So to me, it's pretty easy moving forward. You have got to now make tough decisions. It's hard to say goodbye to somebody you like. People like Antonio Pierce outside of the coaching, outside of Mark Davis. He makes emotional decisions. But right now, and you're right, we don't know what Tom Brady's role is going to be. Until they tell us, If they do, we don't know. But at this point, you have to look at it and say, do you feel confident that this is the guy who's going to get you over the hump? And I keep asking people for evidence of why you think so, and I don't get any.
There is no evidence. I mean, there's none. And it's embarrassing, the decision making. And I think that that's what it comes down to too. We talk about the in-game play calling and the management of said game, the calling of the defense. Here we are, Patrick Graham gets away with that freaking, that zero look or whatever, where he just sends the house at the line of scrimmage. Well, yeah, you can get away with that against the Saints when they're down all their offensive players, or the Jaguars when they're down offensive players. And, oh yeah, both those teams are hurt. You do that against a competent offense and then they torch your ass. So like, where is the overriding of that of Patrick Graham? We already know he's got one foot out the door anyway. So to your point about coordinators, that like, we're gonna have to restock that cabinet, even if Antonio Pierce is retained. But that decision making, like, where is the Antonio Pierce that's walking into the stadium wearing Brock Bowers' jersey with sunglasses on, a smirk on his face, pointing at that? Like, that's cool. I'm like, I love that part of Antonio Pierce. But then why do you freaking go from a dog to a freaking, I don't know, a whatever in the game? Like, what? Where is that guy? Where is that freaking, that decisiveness, that aggression, that posturing, that all that stuff completely disappears in the game? And then you go to the offensive side of the ball, it's the same shit. We were told that Brock Bowers was unguardable in the red zone, and it took until the last play of the season for them to throw it to Brock Bowers in the end zone. Y'all hear me? Like, out there, anybody that's out there defending this coaching staff, do you hear this? You have an unguardable player, arguably the best tight end that's ever played in the game, certainly out of his rookie year, and it took to the last effing play of the season for you to throw it to him in the red zone? This is bullshit. This is so lame. They all need to go. Mark needs to grow a pair or drop the ones he's got and fire all these sumbitches. And let's get this thing restarted and off on the right track. Let's trade for somebody that could possibly be a franchise quarterback, or make an aggressive move in the draft to draft a guy, because we're not going to go anywhere until we get a goddamn quarterback. Let's figure that out. We were told that we weren't going to have Band-Aids at quarterbacks. Well, guess what? We got 3 of them right now. So let's figure this shit out, Raiders. Man, I'm turning the calendar way too many times. I'm going to be dead before this thing is over, man. I want to see some success with this football team. I got kids in their 20s that don't know the Raiders to be anything other than a shit show. What are we doing? Sorry, Scott, man, I'm telling you, it's been bottling up all day long, and thank God, thank you for this platform, and thank you to those of you in Raider Nation that are willing to hear me freaking do this. But man, this is
but that's why we have you on, Murph, because we want, and I know a lot of the fans I see in the chat from various channels all over are echoing your point and agree with you. So I get it. And again, I think that you're in a situation here, and you talked about the quarterback. Look, the way the draft is now shaping up, it's going to be hard. And I know some of the folks out there don't like Shedeur Sanders. They don't like Cam Ward. They don't think those two guys are the answer. That's fine. I don't think the Raiders will be in position, at least as of today. Anything can happen to get one of those guys anyway. So now you got to look in the second or third round, the Jackson Dart type guys, the Quinn Ewers type guys. And if those are the guys, they're not guys that you're going to start as a rookie right from the gate, right, over Aiden O'Connell. So I think you're looking at a situation next year until they can figure out the long-term solution at quarterback, where you'll probably see Aiden O'Connell go in at least to camp. And again, a lot can change. So I'm just giving you just a point of view. That Aiden O'Connell will go in being the starting quarterback with a young rookie that's drafted in the second or third round as the backup. And hopefully that you can get a coaching staff, the right people in who can develop that guy. And who knows, maybe you strike gold. Maybe you strike gold with Jackson Dart or Quinn Ewers. These guys were ranked higher before their final seasons in college, and they fell off for various reasons. So that's where you're at. But I do think, though, that this franchise, despite all of the years, and like you said, all the pages of calendars that you've had to turn, is a situation where this is a critical juncture, because the Raiders, and somebody was chastising me friendly-wise in the chat about saying what's there to be positive about, $100 million in cap space. And I think the fact that you can have an opportunity here with the way this franchise is financially, with it being in Las Vegas, and with the opportunity now to go get and figure out what you're going to do with a coaching staff that you believe paints a vision for you, has a plan, has a record of being able to develop young talent, especially at quarterback, to come in and change things around. Because I think, look, what Antonio Pierce did last year, commendable, all that stuff. That doesn't take away from that. But if you look at, you watch the NFL this season, you watch every Raiders game, you watch what's happening around the league, this isn't going to get it done. And do you really want to take a chance? Yes, turnover sucks. I get it. People are tired of turnover. But do you want to stick with the same guy just for the sake of not having turnover? Or do you want to say, you know what, we got to make a big play here. And if not, we could be the doormat in the division for a long time, because all the other teams in the AFC West have gotten better. They've gotten better. They're all in the playoffs. I don't care who they beat, what happened, doesn't matter. They're there. You're talking about teams all had 10 or more wins. The Raiders had one quality win all season. They had 4 altogether, yes, but they had one quality win. So you look at that and you start to say to yourself, well, boy, something's got to happen. But you have young talent, you have a young roster, you have an offensive line that needs some supplementing, but you got Brock Bowers, you have some other players on defense that have done well, you have an offensive line, you had 2 starters from this draft class. So there is some positives, but I think if you don't have the right leadership, if you don't have the right coaching, it's not going to help.
Yeah, and I thought, shout out Mo, man. Mo is, and I love both of you guys on your show, and you're the only Raider podcast I listen to. And I thought Mo made a really, really good point on one of your more recent episodes. He said, who are you chasing? Are you chasing the depleted Jaguars and depleted Saints team? Or are you chasing the Chiefs, the Broncos, the Chargers, the Ravens, the Bills? Like, those are the teams. That's the standard. And so this whole idea of like where there were apologies getting made for this coaching staff and for this football team based on a couple of wins against some really bad teams, that never resonated with me. And I thought that by Mo putting it that way, that's the damn truth. And that's what we have to do, right? Like, you think about and John Gruden catches a lot of shit, and I know that he deserves a lot of shit, but he was building that Raider team to beat the Chiefs. That was his goal. Yeah. He wanted to beat his boy Andy Reid, and he wanted to beat the hell out of the Chiefs because they are the standard of the league. That was what the goal was. I don't get that sense from this coaching staff. I get a sense from this coaching staff like they're trying to get by. Like, with the quarterback. Everything is kind of like, well, let's mitigate it. Let's try not to lose. No, F that. Let's try to win. Don't worry about mitigating it. Let's freaking be aggressive and go after it. Al Davis said, we don't take what they defense gives us. We take what we want. When are we going to return that mentality to this organization that we're going to take what we want and not what you give us, man? Let's come on that. Scott, whether it's front office, coaching staff, ownership, I try not to be critical of Mark Davis because I understand he wants the best for this football team. He wants them to win more than any of us. So I don't want to be overly critical of Mark. That said, I started leaning into it a little bit last year with the slow approach to the whole Josh McDaniels evaluation. Right? It was like, okay, it was kind of like the writing was on the wall, and then it was like, what are we doing? Like, it's just prolonging it. It's like, it's just dragging out. And I feel like if he drags his feet on this one, if there truly was a situation, I'm speaking to you, Mark, man, I love you, dude. Like, I promise, like, I've got your back. Out of any Raider fan, I got your damn back. But if you're going to drag out the process, and this were 3 games for Antonio Pierce to prove himself after 10 straight losses, that's a miss. And let's make up our mind. Let's be decisive. Like, let's return to glory. The greatness of the Raiders is in its future. Let's take a serious approach to this process and be definitive and decisive today. And then let's move this team forward. Don't drag your feet. If you have to drag it out because one of your lead candidates is a guy like Ben Johnson who's in the playoffs and you can't interview him anyways. Okay, I get that. I understand the timing of the NFL. But outside of that, you saw what the Patriots did today. So guess what? You bet you that Mike Vrabel is going to be in the building tomorrow, right? Oh, yeah. Those kind of things, and the connections that Brady has to Vrabel and those rumors and speculations. I was texting with Will Compton. Me and Jeff were with Will Compton last night. We love our boy Will Compton. And we were talking about, because he played for Vrabes. And we were talking to him. We were like, hey, Vrabes is in the conversation for the Raiders. Like, this could be a thing. Well, guess what? I think that thing might be done now. So let's not drag our feet. If Vrabel's the guy, then make a choice and let's make a move now. If he's not the guy and you're waiting for one of the guys in the playoffs, then fine. But don't, this whole evaluation thing or like, oh, I'm okay, you're okay. Nah, bullshit. We got our asses kicked in this freaking game in this season. Let's move on, man. It's time to go.
Yeah, and I want to get to a comment here, but from Jay on YouTube. It says, yeah, Murph, totally AP's fault. We didn't get a quarterback. Or Kingsbury, that weight falls on his shoulders, and AP should have never brought in Minshew. Man, we really are tripping. Wasn't he sheesh that guy? Okay, so again, though, this is where I go back to, and I hear a lot of comments like Jay's here, which is, it's not, yeah, it was his fault that he didn't Kingsbury, because Kingsbury wasn't bought in on Antonio Pierce and his 2-year limited contract. It was a good business move by Cliff Kingsbury. Second, again, Jay, give me evidence to why he should be the coach again. Why? Don't give me why he didn't succeed. Instead, give me why he should be. It's not at all. If you watch the Raider games, which I'm assuming you're a Raiders fan, you're watching our show, what did you see this year that made you think that Antonio Pierce did a good job at head coach, even with bad talent? Because you can see a coach do a good job. You can see teams improve in certain areas, even if they don't win. I've said it for, I don't know, 3 months now, that I wasn't going to evaluate Antonio Pierce on record alone, because I figured the Raiders, we picked them to win 7 games, right? We didn't think that they were going to be a playoff team. But what we saw, a 10-game losing streak, all this stuff happen, was not just because of a lack of a franchise quarterback, or it wasn't because they didn't have Cliff Kingsbury. He hired Luke Getsy. And if you don't think that's true, then you're not living in reality, okay? So the responsibility goes across the organization. We've said that, and you've said that, Murph, on your show too, which is, it's an organizational failure, which is why you brought up Mark Davis. It's not just Antonio Pierce's failure, because they put him in a position, then they didn't give him everything, true, but they also went through a process that wasn't even a process when they hired him. They didn't interview anybody else. Leslie Frazier, guys who had been out of the league way past their prime, they interviewed 2 other candidates who weren't even really viable. It's a joke around the NFL. That's why people don't talk about it, because it was not even a process. So again, show me the evidence to why Antonio Pierce deserves a second season as a full-time head coach. I don't think there is any. Don't give me what he didn't have. Instead, tell me what he brought to the table. What did he bring to the table that says he deserves another chance? And I hear crickets over and over again, Murph.
Absolutely. And I mean, like, when do we stop making excuses for people and hold them accountable to their actions and their freaking record? Right. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we did it for well, I'm not going to do that because I always get yelled at whenever I take a run at Derek Carr. But it's like, when are we going to stop with the excuses? Like, you know, well, he needs a defense. Oh, well, he needs a pass catcher. Okay, well, then we got him his best friend. And then all that failed too. And there was always like an excuse for it. Well, when are we going to stop making excuses for AP? And I would say that to that guy that put that, you know, that comment in there, that when are you going to stop making excuses? When is it? When is there? Okay, I'll ask you this. I'll throw it back out there to you, Dave, I believe that was. Yep. When has it ever been a perfect scenario for every team in the league, or at least the team in the league that ends up winning the Super Bowl? When has it ever been perfectly set up for them? The freaking Lions have won 2 games this year, and they have 22 starters out with injury. Like, you hear anybody in Detroit making excuses? Like, come on, man. Like, it's never perfect. There's never a perfect time to have a kid. There's never a perfect time to get married. And there's never a perfect time to win a Super Bowl. But great players are great when they have to be. And right now, our great players aren't, well, we don't have very many great players, but they're not great. The Raiders are not great. And that's what it takes to win it all. You understand the level of elite play that is required to freaking win it all? And it's going to come from players that aren't perfect. The scenario that's not perfect, but it ends up working. They make it work. They make it work with chemistry. They make it work with strategy. They make it work with motivation. They make it work. Those are the things that make it different. There's a reason that Bill Belichick won so many Super Bowls. There's a reason that, keep it on our side, there's a reason John Madden was one of the most brilliant head coaches in the history of the league, because he outcoached the shit out of everybody else across from him. That's why the Raiders were great. And along with the idea that they had some great players, and then those great players were great when they had to be. There's a reason that Derek Carr has way better stats than Kenny Stabler, but Kenny Stabler's in the Hall of Fame and has a Super Bowl MVP. That's the freaking reason. So until we return to that mentality as fans, then we're not going to be able to accept the idea that change is necessary. Let's not lower the standard for the Shield. The standard is championships. And I understand that Al Davis lost his fastball at the end of his life, but the bottom line is that that man committed his franchise to doing nothing but trying with every freaking ounce of energy to try to win a championship. That's got to be the mentality, not this, oh, I'm okay, you're okay. Like, oh, no, well, but let's excuse him because he didn't have this, he didn't have that. No, bullshit. What's his freaking...
That's been my biggest issue, right? Because I don't criticize fans because fans are fans. I don't, how you want a fan is your business. But at the same time, when I look at it, I think that the one thing that sticks out at me is that I think there's so many fans, especially if you're on the younger side, with all due respect, who know the history but didn't live it. And so for them, they find somebody like Pierce who on the surface talks the talk, right? He talks a big game and all that kind of stuff. But if it doesn't translate into wins on the field, and you're taking, for example, 10 losses in a row, you can't overcome that. And playing hard for a guy is not the same as playing well for a coach or advancing your skill set, getting better as the season goes on. No, because that's where, yes, there's some players who got better as the season went on. There's no question about that. And they played hard, but there was not enough progress. Now, if Mark Davis, my opinion means nothing because Mark Davis is going to make the decision. But if you're looking at this objectively, take yourself back, and you do this, Murph, even though you're a passionate Rabid fan, you take it back and you say, wait a minute, let's look outside this. Let's look at it from a 360 or a 180 degree view and say, wait a minute, how do they stack up against the rest of the division? How do they then stack up against the rest of the AFC? How do they stack up against the rest of the NFL? And it's not even close. And if you watch what's been happening here, and if you watch, like we have every single minute of every single game, and for me, multiple times a week, you see that there is a lack of execution, a lack of improvement in certain areas, and that comes down to coaching. And you don't change that by saying, oh, get a new offensive coordinator, but keep the head coach. No, he just didn't get it done. And so to me, if you want to get better, then they have to move forward. They have to have somebody who comes in with a plan that is about winning and that is a culture. Because remember, everybody said, Antonio Pierce, oh, he's building a culture. He's building this Raiders culture. Well, that Raiders culture is not about the past. It's not about, hey, we're going to be tough. We're going to kick people's ass on the field. We're going to do all that stuff. That's part of Raider culture, but that's not a culture of winning. And to me, if you don't have a culture of winning, which he did not build, then you don't have an opportunity to take another try at it. All right, we're going to take a quick break for our audio audience. If you're watching us on video, by the way, our video brought to you by our good friends at BetUS. We're going to stay with you, but if you're on the audio, we're coming back right after this. It's Scott, it's Murph. It is Silver and Black today, the post-game edition. Raiders 34-20 losers to the Los Angeles Chargers in the final game of the season. This is Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back. All right, we are back here with the second and final segment of the post-game show. It's Scott Gulbransen. It's Murph from Raiders Fan Radio. By the way, follow Murph on x.com @_Murph, M-U-R-F. Don't forget, go subscribe to the Raiders Fan Radio podcast as well, wherever you get your audio, also on YouTube. And we'll talk a little bit later again about the One Nation Foundation, the charitable organization that Murph and his team set up that supports Raiders charities. We'll get to that in a minute. You don't want to do that. I'm Scott Gulbransen, Odyssey Sports original podcast covering the Raiders. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get that audio. Remember, don't rate or review us based on the Raiders record. No, we're trying to give you good content, so do that. Also, our video brought to you by our good friends at BetUS, where, again, I have to remind you that you get 150% sign-up bonus if you want to go bet your playoff football with BetUS. Just use the promo code YouTube150. That's YouTube150. You can deposit up to $2,000 there and get some free dough to bet on your football, whether it be the college football playoffs or pro football. So thanks to our folks over at BetUS for the show. All right, Murph, we talked about some of what happened today, and I think you looked at, again, for the people I've gone toe-to-toe with a lot of our listeners on the Aiden O'Connell situation. And again, Aiden O'Connell today, 34-24, so good completion percentage, 70%, just 214 yards. He had the one interception and the 2 touchdowns. Had the one, of course, touchdown late in garbage time, but he did lead the team. And listen, I think that you look at this situation, and yes, with better coaching, could Aiden O'Connell improve? I think so. But is he the answer? No. So you have to think about where this team goes. But there are a lot of needs. We saw in the Raiders today rush for 39 yards. Again, they are the worst rushing team in the NFL. And just unable to establish that. And so they have to think about what they're going to do next year when it comes to running back. So we're going to turn our attention eventually here to the draft and all that, and we'll get to that. But I think that you look at this season, Murph, and so many things that people were excited about. I think that's where it was. And you and I joked at the beginning of the season, right? Because you start every year by saying the Raiders are going to win the Super Bowl, which is what a fan should say, right? Which is what a fan should say. I totally don't disagree with that from your perspective. But at the same time, that was based on kind of everything we had been sold. Remember, physicality, pain, all that stuff that we were told that this Raiders team would be. We were told that they would run the ball down your throats, and then they would pass the ball. They do all that stuff. And it just didn't materialize. And I think that so many fans got very discouraged very early, because even if you're losing, but you have an identity, then people can get on board with it, even if you're not necessarily winning all the games you want, because you feel like, okay, this team is going somewhere. There's a plan here. There's a vision that Antonio Pierce set out when he said all those things that just never materialized. And I don't think you can blame that on a lack of talent at certain positions, because even if you have a player who might not be the long-term answer at a position, if they're playing that way, you can see it. And just not that these guys didn't play hard, right? But what we didn't see was the kind of reality of what we were told that this team's identity would be.
Yeah, they defined the identity at the end of last year and in the offseason comments. And like you mentioned, that ill intent, violence, physicality, pain, right? That was the identity of the football team. And then early on, I remember there was one of the beat reporters asked AP, how long did it take for the guys to buy in after they got here, after they started off in the season? I think it was even preseason. And he said, they're already bought in. And then it was a handful of weeks later, it was, what is the identity for this football team? And his answer was, well, we're still looking for that. We're still trying to figure that out. And I'm paraphrasing, but that was the gist of it. And so I'm sitting here going like, wait a minute. I thought the identity was ill intent, violence, physicality, and pain. And I thought everybody was bought in. And so that's where a lot of folks that are endorsing Antonio Pierce, they like to bring up the Dan Campbell example. They like to bring up the Dan Campbell. And I'm looking at this and I'm going, do you not see that this is apples and cornflakes here? Like, this is not even the same sport we're talking about here. That's not even close, because you're right, Scott. It was the identity was there. And you can have that identity established and have it not necessarily reflect wins. But when you're making boneheaded decisions in game management, you're making boneheaded play calls, you're making boneheaded player evaluations, when it looks all those things, then it stops adding up. Then it doesn't matter how hard you're playing. Because here, I got news for you too, man. And I think this is a really not news for you, Scott, but the proverbial you out there. I think there's when people consider the idea that well, yes, the players are playing hard. And I understand that there have been Raider teams of the past, and there are other NFL teams where when like the Chargers last year, when coaching has been an abject failure, the players stop. They kind of stop with a lot of the energy and effort that goes in the game. But all that said, at the end of the day, still too, they're all responsible for their own tape. And they're all playing for their own livelihoods. And so then to make a thing like the positive is that, well, yeah, they're playing hard. I'm sorry, man. I just, that sentiment still gets lost on me. I understand the concept and I can appreciate the players playing hard, but they should be, because they have a legacy they're trying to protect. They want to play next year. whether it's for the Raiders or somebody else. They want to be in the league, and you're not going to be in the league if a bunch of your tape shows you making some lazy ass decisions. So I mean, so I can appreciate the concept of that, but that I'll say it like this: that as a calling card, no. That doesn't go. And that's where it starts to disassociate itself from the Dan Campbell example, because his teams were playing hard and you saw the identity being established and you saw the right?
Right. No, that's what I'm saying, though, is that's why the Dan Campbell example is so bad, because Dan Campbell had that, remember his opening press conference where he went nuts and he cried, all that kind of stuff. And he was talking about that physicality, and you saw it in that team. And if you look back at that year, and you can go check me, look back at that year, Dan Campbell only won 3 games. 2 of them were sort of blowouts and weren't close. The rest of them were very competitive, as you mentioned. Yes. And I think that's where the difference is, because those guys played hard too, but you can't tell me that you can compare those two. And so again, and I know I keep harping on this, where's the evidence that he is? I don't see it. And again, you mentioned him rolling in Brock Bowers' jersey to the game today. And that's all cool and everything for people who like that, but it doesn't translate on the field. It didn't do anything. In fact, Brock Bowers, until the second half, they barely targeted him. And you said about targeting him in the red zone, they hadn't really done it. But I want to bring up Brock Bowers, because Brock Bowers caught, and I think this is the kind of culture, to me, you want. And I think Brock Bowers epitomizes it. He caught that touchdown and celebrated very little. I mean, people were slapping his hand, but did you see how fast he just walked towards?
Yep.
He got the touchdown. He didn't spike the ball. He dropped the ball and he started walking towards the sideline. People giving him high fives and hugging him and all kind of stuff was great. That's fine. And then even on the sideline, they showed him and people were high fiving, but it was kind of low. But he didn't have like a wide smile on his face. No, he just wants to win. And I think that's it. You shouldn't be satisfied with anything but winning. And just playing hard isn't enough in professional football. It has never been, and it never will be, because it's not Pop Warner. You're Pop Warner, your kids play hard, fine, whatever. It's not about that. It's about teaching young guys how to play football. It's about teaching them responsibility. It's about teaching them how to play on a team. But when it comes to professional football, it's all about the winning. And if you're not going to win, fine. Everybody goes through tough years, okay? But if your culture is a winning culture, then you don't sit there and scream after beating one of the worst teams in the NFL and chant the Raiders chant. Look, you can feel good about it because those guys work their butts off. I get it. But how about setting up the expectation that, hey, when we've only won 3 games and we win a game, yeah, we're not going to go in and do a big celebration. I'm going to do a quick thing, say, hey, I'm proud of you. We got to keep working. We got to get better. And boom, that's it, right? But that's not what we see. And I think that's a lack of maturity for a coach. And again, in some ways, I don't blame Antonio Pierce, Murf, because I don't think he should have ever had the job to begin with.
Yeah, he was definitely thrust into it way too soon. And listen, I mean, Michelle and Jeff and I, going back the clock 1 year ago, just about to the day, we're sitting in Allegiant Stadium after beating the hell out of the Broncos, and I'm pretty sure we started the AP chant. Like, we were that bought in to what Antonio Pierce did for this organization. We were also at his first interim game against the Giants, and the tailgate was electric. It was an amazing environment to be in, and it was like, oh my gosh, this guy brought us back. Like okay, like this, we were there for. And I'm not trying to freaking say we're anything over here, but we were like front and center for a lot of this stuff. We were there for his first speech at the Blitnikoff Foundation dinner last year, and he was explaining to what he was establishing in within the culture, within the locker room, and it was like, wow, this is incredible. Like, we loved it, but then it doesn't show up on game day here in year 2, and it's Scott. I'll never not be confused by this season. You and I have been around and watched a lot of football and seen a lot of Raider football seasons, whatever. This was so confusing to me that the guy that was an absolute lion has turned into a sheep now here in this game in 2024 on the sideline. Like, where did that go? I don't understand, especially when your job is on the line. I don't want to just sit here and pick on Antonio Pierce, but it's very confusing the way that this season has unfolded. And I'll just end it with this, because I feel like I've been really negative tonight, but I'm just in my feels because I'm a Raider fan and we suck this year.
It wasn't a good season though, so I get it.
It was terrible, but I'll just end it with this, that like, I will never not appreciate what Antonio Pierce did for this team last season. Like the turnaround from Josh McDaniels to where they ended that season, he restored hope, he restored faith, he restored a level of pride that we're never not proud to be Raider fans, but a different level of pride within this fan base, and we were invigorated. And I think that that's the reason that it hurts so much now here at the end of the season, is that it was a little bit of a fugazi. It didn't go the way that any of us expected, that where, you guys picked them to win 7 or 8 games. I picked them to win 14, for crying out loud, like a complete moron. I thought that this team was going to win, and that was the expectation. And if this would have been a 9-win season, 10-win season, narrowly missing the playoffs with a lot of good things showing up, and okay, now we still got to work on getting our quarterback, but thankfully we had serviceable enough play to keep us in there, then it would be a completely different mentality. But this thing was an abject failure, especially, and I'll just see this last thing, especially we won our second game against the freaking Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore, and then lost to the Carolina Panthers the next week at home. Like, the contrast of those 2 football games is a microcosm for the contrast of the way last year ended and the way this year ended. If that doesn't tell the story of this coaching staff, not to make it about one man, I'll just say, if that doesn't tell you the story of this coaching staff and the story of the 24 Raiders, I don't know what does. And if that's acceptable to you as a fan, then fine, knock yourself out. But for this guy, hell no, it's time to change.
Yeah, and again, we go back on our show, Mo and I, as you know, we were skeptical when this hire was made. And both of us thought that they should have at least talked to, who knows if it would have worked out, who knows if he wanted the job, to Harbaugh. And you saw what he's done, the Chargers. Now, he does have the quarterback there, no question about it. But at the same time, there was no other search. There was no other search. I mean, it was an emotional time, and they made an emotional decision because this is the guy who came in and did it. But I also look at Antonio Pierce and I say, look, there were warning signs there. People didn't want to see them. And when you ask, oh, has he ever been a coordinator in the NFL? No. He'd only been in the NFL a couple of years. He was a coordinator at Arizona State. And you know what happened at Arizona State with the issues they got into. But it was nothing. There was no evidence other than he saw. And listen, how many times in your life do you come across people? And I'm not saying that they do it to fool you, because I think Antonio Pierce believed he said. I have no question about it. But the end of the day, it comes down to, do you deliver on what you said you were going to do? Plain and simple. He didn't say he was going to make the playoffs. He didn't say he was going to win 9, 10 games. He didn't say any of that. He said physicality, pain, all that stuff. He said that's how they were going to play. They didn't play that way. So I have to look at that and say he talked a really great game, and he probably believed it. But then, as a lot of people in the chat have said, got in over his head. He had to have 2 senior advisors because he didn't have experience. So he has, his senior advisors are there, and it didn't really seem to help in any way. By the way, shout out to Pirate 1975 for the $5 to the super chat. All that goes, by the way, to the One Nation Foundation, which you'll hear about in a second. But it just didn't materialize. And so, look, he gave it his best shot. I have no doubt that he tried his best to be a head coach in the NFL. It just didn't work. And there's no evidence to prove me otherwise. Chris Jones, by the way, $2. Thank you for your super chat as well. It goes to the One Nation Foundation. So we got some of those pouring in. I appreciate that very much. But I do think that this team over the next, like you said, Murph, I don't know that he's going to be fired today or on Black Monday, or if they're looking at a coach maybe that's still in the playoffs, then they might have to wait on it. But I do think that change has to come. And I think that a lot of Raider Nation, at least I'm not saying everybody, but the people from who DM me and listen to the show, and a lot of people will be disappointed if they don't make a big move here and decide to set a strong and very visible and clear vision for where this team's going to go, both on the field and off. And that has a lot of draft implications, obviously, coming up as well. So we'll see where it all goes. But certainly, we appreciate you guys after all these games, because it's been rough. Remember, we went 10 weeks in a row talking about losses, which I've never been a part of, covering the Raiders for almost 8 years now. So you look at that, Murph, and you just say to yourself, well, okay, so now you have to start to think about what the future looks like. And the next few weeks, I think, are going to be very, very telling for what Mark Davis has planned, what this franchise plans to do in order to right the ship, if you will, and to get this franchise, who is, again, the franchise doing extremely well in Las Vegas from a financial standpoint, They have everything they need to win, except some talent, of course, and I think the coaching staff. So we'll see where it all goes. Murph, before we head out of here for the night and let everybody get back to their Sunday, tell everybody about the One Nation Foundation. One of the things we do, not only super chats here, but we're doing some other things, and all the super chats that we do here on Silver and Black today during the season go to the One Nation Foundation, and which Murph set up with the team there to support Raiders charities. But Murph, tell everybody about, because I know we have a lot of new viewers on as well. Chris Haskell, my buddy here in Ohio, by the way, $20 super chat as well. So thank you for that, man. I appreciate it. And they're in the room right next to me, by the way, watching as well, as we're all snowed in here. We have a lot of snow here in Cincinnati today. So thanks to him for doing that as well. But tell everybody, Chris and Chris Haskell, Chris Jones, these guys, we have a couple other super chats. Tell them where their money's going and what you do with the One Nation Foundation.
Yeah, appreciate everybody in the chat room tonight. Thank you so very, very much. And those of you that contributed monetarily via the super chats, and I apologize, I try to keep up with the chat, but I can't see them all, but you know who you are. And so just know that our gratitude is definitely first and foremost for your contributions to the One Nation Foundation. We figured out a few years ago, not more than a few now, back in 2019, we can make some money doing Raiders fan radio, and we decided that we wanted to give 100% of that money away. So we formed the One Nation Foundation, and we give it away to Raiders-related charities. Like the good folks at Raider Dad, like the good folks at the Blitnikoff Foundation. And I'd like to just take a special moment here to shout out Raider Dad. They were finally, as The Rock would say, highlighted by the Raiders themselves. And if you go to Raiders.com, there's an article in there about Josh Caminite, the founder of Raider Dad. And it's great because his picture there has the One Nation Foundation backdrop behind him. And they talk about how they have now taken 179 underprivileged kids to Raider games with their parental figures and provided them tailgates and everything else. It's a phenomenal organization. And we're not talking about even just underprivileged kids, but kids that have, a challenging diagnosis and a lot of things going on in their lives. And so not only does it give those kids an opportunity to go to those games and connect with those parental figures, but it gives that entire family something to escape from, to get away, from the challenges that are in their life, for a few hours and watch the Raiders. So that's where all that money goes. So if you can contribute monetarily, again, via the super chats, that's wonderful. If you go to RaidersFanRadio.com, there's a drop down for the One Nation Foundation. You can hit that, and then it will take you to a PayPal link where 100% of that money will go straight to the foundation. And then even if you can't contribute monetarily, all we ask for is a like, a subscribe, a thumbs up, a retweet, share it with your Raider friends, because all that generates advertising opportunities like the good folks over there at BetUS and the folks that we have over on our channel. And we can't do that without your listens and your supports. And so we just thank you so very, very much and what you do for the One Nation Foundation. And being that we're at the end of the year, I also want to just make sure I take a moment to thank you, Scott. Thank you for this platform. We have grown our foundation considerably since we started doing these post-game shows here with you on Silver and Black today. And for you, someone that's a legacy media guy, to kind of give a knucklehead like me, just a fan, the opportunity to jump on here on a post-game show and not only just spew my Raider nonsense, but to talk about our foundation and our nonprofit. Brother, we can't thank you enough, man. You're so kind to share that with us. And so thank you very much. And plus, and also too, thank you for the other things that we got going on to benefit the foundation going forward. So can't thank you enough, Scott. Shout out Mo, man. Love our interactions on Twitter. Like, you guys have been so freaking kind to us and our listeners and Swag, Jeff, and Michelle, like all three of us, man. Like you guys are just, I don't know, like you're just, I don't want to sit here and just blow smoke, but like we can't appreciate how cool you guys are and how nice you've been to us. There's a lot of people that shit on podcasters and people that do what we do, and you two are not one of them. And you, Scott, for again giving us this platform and letting us do this for the course of the year. I'm going to miss these shows on Sundays and look forward to coming back next Sunday as well. And so everybody that's on the Silver and Black Today feed and listen on the audio podcast, thank you for for endorsing this show and endorsing us and endorsing, most importantly, the One Nation Foundation. And I promise you that we're going to, as we continue to grow this thing, we're going to continue to bolster Raiders related charities, because that's the generosity of Raider Nation. When we say it's La Familia, it's no joke.
Yeah, no kidding. And Murph, you listen, it's my pleasure. I know Mo feels the same way. And we wouldn't do it if we didn't believe in what you and Jeff and Michelle do, because you guys are all the genuine article. There's no BS with you. So we appreciate that very much and like what you're doing. And as you mentioned, I know we've been talking about it all season and we can't talk about it fully and unveil it to you guys. But Murf and I have been working on something for a year that we're going to be doing with the foundation going into the offseason, into the next season. Very close to my heart, and you'll understand that why later on. But it's phenomenal in the work that you do. And I know the Blitnikoff Foundation and Raider Dad, shout out again to Josh, who, taking, I mean, it's tough for families who make good money to go to football games nowadays because of how expensive it can be, especially in Las Vegas being one of the highest, if not the highest ticket in the NFL. And what Josh and his organization have done and how you've helped support that is phenomenal, because you have kids being able to go out to their first Raiders game. And it's just the faces of the families and the kids when you see those pictures, and it's great. And I'm glad to be just a very small part of that. So thank you to that as well. And don't forget to follow Raiders Fan Radio. If you're a Raider fan, you got to do that. It's all good stuff. So we certainly appreciate that. And Murf, we will, I know, do something else coming up here quick as we get towards the Raider off season. We'll get you on a show and make sure that we are staying in touch with you. But thank you for committing to this, and we certainly appreciate it. I love bringing the fan perspective. Mo and I always, as you know, try to stay objective, but we like bringing the fan perspective to these post-game shows so that people can come in. And the chat has been great, having people all in the chat. So thank you all for being here. And I know the chat comes in from our side. It comes in from the Raiders Fan Radio as it's kind of simulcast. So thank you to all of you for doing that. And Murf, my friend, I will be talking to you very soon.
Look forward to it, Scott. And then, so I normally, here's where I start screaming about who we're going to beat next week. But like, let's just get the offseason right, I guess is all I got to say. But but for sure, Scott, let's we're in the, here I am here in the cabin here in the middle of nowhere. But we're getting ready to start the process of building the next fan cave. So as soon as that thing is done, if you would honor us by being our first in studio guest in the new fan cave, we would love to have you here to do as Raiders Fan Radio episode simulcast here on Silver and Black today. But hopefully maybe like this summer, man. That'd be great to have you back down there.
Oh, listen, it'd be my pleasure to come back down there. And this time I probably will not drink as much as I did last time.
Yeah, you will. No, you will. Yeah, no, we got plenty of room for you. I'm out here in the cabin. We got a guest room, Scott. You're good. We don't even have to worry about calling Ubers, brother. You just walk right over here and go to bed.
I love it, man. All right, my brother. I'll see you soon.
All right, Scott. See you, man.
All right, take care. All right, everybody. I want to thank you guys all for joining us this season for the post-game shows. And of course, Mo and I will be back on Tuesday with our regularly scheduled show. Don't forget, you can not only catch us throughout the week on the podcast, but also Sunday mornings on the radio. We've got a couple more weeks of that before we go on hiatus on the radio in Las Vegas, 101.5 KDON, and also on 98.5 The Bet, which is an HD2 station there in Las Vegas as well. So we love talking to the folks out in Vegas as well. So thank you for that. And again, I want to remind you and I want to thank again our sponsor, BetUS, for what they've done for us this season, because it's been huge. And don't forget, you can get 150% sign up bonus, 150%, folks, up to $2,000. Use the promo code YouTube150. That's YouTube150. Do that while you still can. You can still bet some of these college games, and you can bet on my Notre Dame Irish, right? In the Orange Bowl. Come on. We'll see. I'm hoping all my buddies that are here at the Cigar Lounge where I'm doing the show tonight, a lot of State fans. I'm hoping that Notre Dame game against Ohio State, whether they can beat them or not, different story, but hey, we'll see if it happens. But do us a favor, make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your audio. Just look for Silver and Black today. Also, make sure you rate and review the show as well. If you're watching us on YouTube or any of the other video channels, make sure you subscribe there. Hit that notifications bell. That way you know we have a new video when it's available. All right. For Murf, I'm Scott Gulbransen. For our producer, Mike Robier, back at Odyssey, we certainly appreciate his help and thank him for a great season as well. We will be back on Tuesday. Take care, Raider Nation, and have a good night.